Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Pena, and this is the Women of Consciousness talk show where we talk about all things consciousness. And today we are going to talk about the hero's journey. And I'd like to go around and just introduce ourselves to our viewers who will be on here listening to this talk show for today. So, Lucy, if you'd like to start and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucy Qian. I'm also known as XiXi from some artistic circles, and I am a soulpreneur. I met Natalie and Pam in our Masters of Consciousness and Transformative Studies program at JFK University, which I have recently graduated from, and I'm currently attending Meridian University in California now, which is very much focused on imaginal psychology. And I plan to take that particular perspective as an overlay with the very rich and diverse experiences that I have gained at JFK with these wonderful women. So it's a pleasure to be on this show. And thank you, Natalie, for having me on here.
Thanks, Lucy. And Pam, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Pamela Vaillant, go by Pam. Like Lucy said, we all met at school for JFKU. I have a specialization in dream studies, the life coaching, and I'm finishing up with trauma studies certification. So as much as I love consciousness and the transformative journey, I'm gravitated towards helping people heal. I do consider myself like a teacher and a healer in that aspect. And just, kind of clearing up intergenerational trauma and those things to make our shift into a new paradigm a little more smoother. And I love astrology. I use that in my everyday life, as well as numerology. And I think just going to say I guess I'm a twin flame. And so that is kind of a major part of my path and what has brought me into this arena. So I'm really grateful to be here as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. And also, these two amazing women have done some amazing work. And so I'm excited that we will be able to share all of the work that they're doing. And at the end of the show, you guys, we will share with you the information so you can follow them on their socials and see what they're up to, and definitely get involved with anything that they might offer. I am Natalie Pena, and I am a student of consciousness studies. And like they stated, we are in a program called Consciousness and Transformative Studies. It was John F. Kennedy University, now at National University. If you guys are interested in ever joining the program, please go read about it. It's an amazing program. And it's really helped me to kind of hone in on how I want to help support the planet, and how I want to support humanity in general. And I will be graduating in probably in June. So pretty excited about that. And then after graduation, I will be getting my PhD in consciousness and society at the University of West Georgia is where I plan to go. And I'm going to be looking at spiral dynamics, and that's something we'll get into probably later. We are excited to bring a bunch of different topics to you guys. Today, we're going to be talking about the hero's journey, which is it's a vast topic to talk about. There's so many different directions this can go. But I'm really excited, and something that I think it's kind of like a theme, or the universe is talking to us about the hero's journey, and it's a pattern that we see, and it's in everything pretty much, our life, how we imagine things. We're talking about imagination, even our dreams can be a hero's journey as well. And so, I know that Lucy is working on some stuff with the hero's journey in her own life. Pam and I are working on a workshop, and we would love to share that with you guys later, what we're up to. But so why don't we share about what the hero's journey means to us, and how we're utilizing it in our own life to heal and to support others through their journey.
That's a remarkable question, Natalie. I really see the hero's journey ultimately as a journey towards the self, a journey towards the soul. And that's why it is heroic. And that's why it brings up emotions of fear and anxiety and requires courage because it takes a lot of courage to actually find oneself amidst this illusion that we live in. So no matter what your journey is, externally, it could be climbing a mountain physically or going through some kind of trial and tribulation. It actually really resonates internally as finding oneself. So that is ultimately what I think is really important about the hero's journey, and for people to understand that it's truly an internal journey. And
Mhm.
that requires you as the participant, as the hero or the heroine, to lead and to be self-guided.
Absolutely. It does take a lot of courage, but it also alludes to the fact that we are all our own hero and we are all our own heroine. And so when we take the journey, like you said, a lot of fear shows up, and it is a journey. They always say the journey is the destination is the journey. And sometimes you're like, I don't want the journey, leave me alone, get away from me. But it shows up over and over and over again. So I know, Pam, that you've been doing quite a bit of, looking into the hero's journey. You've worked with it. Can you just give us some, how you feel about it? What it means
Oh,
to you?
yeah, absolutely. I guess for me, like I like a lot of what Lucy says, that's a great perspective. And I do share some of that resonates. For me, like I taught high school English for a few years, and I kind of was realizing as I was teaching it and going to school and learning all this stuff that it's like a structure of consciousness, realistically, that we all, like in a spider web, it can be on a day-to-day basis, it could be, long term from the time we have a marriage or a child, and go through different phases that can last, a decade. So I really started seeing it like this intricate spider web, and I started realizing that the hero really represented like us as like the main character of our own life. And so sometimes we have character traits of the hero of being brave and strong and, courageous and resilient. And then other times, like you said, we don't really want to be pushed out of our comfort zone. We don't want to engage with the world around us through these relationships with other people that can be toxic and unhealthy, but are super beneficial for us to learn like our morals and our values and our boundaries. So I started using it in my day-to-day life, realizing like, if I'm the main character and this relationship, this person's my best friend, this person's my mentor, it allowed me to see like the characters that were really like just supporting my journey. And that helped me just transition through things a lot easier. I didn't hold on to attachments and force people to be in roles that they couldn't really be in, or to stay longer than our soul contract really allowed for. So I learned like, okay, our journey's ended. I've learned what I needed to, I've grown, and now I can let you go, knowing like I'm just going to make another friend or meet another lover or have another nemesis, whatever, that archetype is that comes in. And so I think when you kind of can let go a little bit of attachments and force and trying to control your life, and you really start looking at from a narrative of what is my soul story, what is my ego story, who am I aligning and why, what do I need to learn for lessons, it just really helps you navigate the day-to-day life so that you can grow and transform and not be set back by challenges and just in a place of fear and worry. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit what I've just learned.
Awesome. Yeah. And I like it. And I like what you said about like it gives it structure. Because it plays out different. It plays out differently, but it doesn't. But we can't get enough of it as humans, right? Because every single movie that we love is a hero's journey, right? And it's kind of funny, it's like you said, we don't want to change, we don't want to move. So we have to have the courage, it's what Lucy said, you have to have the courage to step into it. And sometimes the universe just kind of kicks us into it, whether we want to or not, right? It's like, you're going to go down this journey. You have to, right? In order to grow, in order to understand. And it's ever evolving. I think that's what I like about it too, is that it's like a pattern that's set, but it's not there's not like an end goal. And like you said, different people coming in and out of your life, there's always going to be new characters that surface. It's kind of like, I love talking about movies because I think of like Lord of the Rings, right? Where it's a trilogy, and he's always on a different journey, and there's different people along the way. And then, and then you have your villains who come in, and ooh, who is that? And it's really a life lesson. And I think too, that can give us an opportunity to see like, what's the life lesson in the people that we feel are our nemesis, or these characters that we feel are villains, are making us feel like we're wrong or bad, or they're wrong or they're bad, or how do we get out of these sticky situations? But I think if we can look at it from the structure of the hero's journey, I think it helps us to move through those things, rather than see them as like, this is a wicked person or this is a terrible person. There's actually somebody who's teaching me something. They're teaching me about life. They're teaching me how to be, maybe set boundaries, or they're teaching me how to be a better person, or whatever it is. They're raising those deep, deep, deep traumas so that I can face them and move through them. So I think it's pretty awesome. And I know that's something you talk about is kind of the structure of the hero's journey. And for me, I've read a couple of books about the hero's journey. I think I can't remember who the author was, and it's been a long time. And I don't know if you guys have any authors or any books that you have read that you guys can recommend. And I think it was called The Hero's Journey, actually. And it was kind of a hard read, to be honest with you, but it did talk about how the different characters play out in your life. So can you just give me an example of like how the hero's journey has applied to your life and what you've done to overcome it, or a time in your life? Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, I think there are meta hero's journeys. So hero's journeys within a hero's journey. I think this entire life itself is a hero's journey. Whether we believe we chose to come into this existence or not, I do think that we chose to have a human birth. And so if we actually see the entire trajectory of our full totality of our lives, it is a hero's journey, because ultimately, what is the goal? We have to ask ourselves at a certain point as we're progressing through this journey, what am I striving for? And every time we ask ourselves that, and the answer is not so succinct, or it's unclear, or met with a bit of disorientation or confusion, I think that's ultimately when we experience an existential crisis or a spiritual shift, some kind of awakening within us that propels us to take up the next stage of our evolution and to take up what our soul is calling for. And that's why I sort of started this idea with the hero's journey as really being an inward journey to the self, because no matter what stage you're at, ultimately the answer to the question of what am I striving for and what am I doing this for, what am I working towards, the ultimate answer, I think, lies within a search for the soul, a search for who we are, an alignment with that, bringing the unconscious to the conscious. I think that's one of Jung's phrases as well. The purpose of life is for man is self-awareness. One could argue, you may or may not agree with that. So the hero's journey, ultimately, we could see it as in a larger framework of our entire life, our entire existence here, and why we're called to be on this planet, what it is we're doing, the various tasks and the missions and the identities that we're choosing to play and enact and relate with through others, as well as why we're here spiritually. And I think it really helps when we see this layout of our lives with clarity. Just as Pam said, I sort of started imagining the hero's journey as like an archetypal map in some ways. So we're navigating life, and sometimes it can feel as though we're on this journey at sea where there are no landmarks. However, actually overlaying the trajectory of our lives with the hero's journey template, if you will, or archetypal themes, gives us a lot of clarity. And that clarity is so powerful. It gives us insight. It gives us justification or some kind of reason as to why we're doing this, why we're going through what it is that we're going through. Things start to make more sense that way when you put it through that perspective and under that particular lens of the hero's journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I kind of like, and you brought up like, and I know we're going to use this term existential crisis, and I know that the ego identity, right, that we go through, where God, that is such a, it's a hard place to be in, and I feel like this gives us, like you said, meaning. It helps us to navigate, right? It's almost like a compass that can help us navigate in those oceans or waters that we don't have maybe a landmark, or we can't see which way we're going. But if we do kind of say, oh, well, here's a journey that I'm on, that at least gives us like, okay, well, this is the direction I want to go. And it's kind of cool because we can put that North Star any way we want. We can say, I want to sell my ship this way, or I want to sell it that way, or I'm going into crazy waters. How do I turn it around? Or how do I just go through it and surrender? And I could think of a ton of movies that kind of do that. I don't know, for some reason movies always pop into my head when I start talking, but I think of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? When they're like getting swallowed up and they're just like going down the tunnel, and it's like the ocean is just swallowing them up. But then there's like, at the end of that, there's another journey that they go on, right? It's not the end, it's just another journey. And I think we do have to understand, like, what is our ego, how is it trying to expand? If we saw the ego as like this ball of energy within us, that's just, it's trying to expand and understand, right? And it's like it expands in consciousness, and then we're able to reach those levels of transpersonal experience, or yet another journey, because we can still go on another journey, right? Where people would call it the transpersonal journey, right, into other realms. And we have movies that do that as well, that just take us into these other places. And I feel like people are aiming to do that, and they used to do that in rituals and rites of passage and stuff like that, drumming ceremonies, right? They were able to transcend the ego a little bit so that they can get to those higher states, which is, like you said, more the archetypal part, where we're tapping into big energy and we're able to see even bigger patterns, right? So very, very beautiful. What about you, Pam? How do you feel about that? Or what do you have to say?
No, I absolutely agree. I think a lot of times we get caught up on the destination and we forget that life's a journey. We can make goals but it's going to be small steps. And for me, I feel like from birth to our actual physical death, when we are no longer here, like that is the major part of the journey. Like that's the whole thing. And it's like, things are going to be destined, there's like people we meet, places we go, children we have or don't have, or things like that, those are destined. But there's a lot of free will in there from point A to point B, and so that's where like we can kind of grow and make mistakes and navigate, like you said, like, no, I don't want to do this, I'm going to turn around because I've learned this lesson, I don't have to go in the whirlpool again. And that's huge. When you learn the lesson, you can be like, no, and you can take a different path. But until you walk that journey and you learn that lesson, you're not going to grow from it. So yeah, I think we all just have different ways of seeing it or navigating it. And that's beautiful, because I don't feel like it's a right or wrong perspective. I definitely feel like, yeah, it's a structure to like the collective. So to hear other people's stories is powerful. I love sharing stories and just being a storyteller. So yeah, I think we've lost a lot of that. Like you said, the rituals, the rite of passage. But the soul, like Lucy was saying, when we go inward and we like try to find ourselves and discover, like, why am I here? I'm not here to work a 9-to-5 job and just pay bills. Like, there's so much more. So when we can get in touch with that archetypal soul energy and really understand, like, what is it I'm supposed to learn here on this, journey on this planet, that's where real transformation takes place. And that's how we evolve consciously and transcend. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. And I do have a question too, because I know that you're working with like the structure, and can you give sort of just an overview of like the pattern of the hero's journey so people can understand, like, what does it really mean? Because we're talking about it, and we're giving suggestions and ideas, and we're saying, hey, yeah, these movies show that, but But can you just kind of give how the structure works, the outline a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 3 stages, and we all know, like in life, we develop through stages, right? Like every decade or so, we'll transform that. Um, and so within those stages, it's kind of broken down. So like the first one, it's really like you're born into this world. You can think of it as like your comfort zone, everything that you know in this current moment that you've built and created. And well, we can only get stuck in a comfort zone for so long, and then like there's nothing to grow. We have to be pushed into a new world where we get to look for our potentials that are hidden and find, new parts of our shadows that we can integrate. And so usually once we get faced with that comfort zone barrier, that starts crossing like gateways. And so usually like a mentor will come along and teach us. We have to gain new skills. So there's always somebody to kind of fill that role. And then it kind of like leads into like that threshold of like a new world. And so now you're meeting allies and friends, like I was saying, all those different characters, those people that are there to be like, helpful, even when they're not helpful. But that's when we start facing like the challenge part. And that's where usually it's like at the middle part of the hero's journey. And like you said, right, with movies, we see that a lot. And so like with Lord of the Rings, right, he had to go get rid of that ring. And on there, he really found out a lot about his character and by facing his own demons. And so like that's something we all have to do. And I know like metaphorically it's about slaying the dragon, really facing your shadows, facing the things you deny and suppress about yourself, because of fears or its potential that you don't know, have the confidence to tap into. And really like that's, kind of the process of alchemy, which I know we're definitely going to talk about later. But it's a huge alchemical process of integrating self, discovering self. And then, so once you kind of get through those tests and those lessons and those challenges, there comes, more gateways where you get that reward. And in my personal experiences with the universe, that's when I kind of tap into like my channeling mode, and they'll start giving me like puzzle pieces. They're like, rewarding me with insights and like premonitions of what's to come. And so like I've been able to learn the structure that way, like, oh, I'm in the reward stage because I'm getting some downloads and now everything's making sense that I just went through, and you're giving me flashes of what's to come. And so at the end of it, in like the third act, the hero just starts taking all of that wisdom, all of that knowledge that they've gained, and again, reintegrating it and kind of just transforming and becoming a new person, a wiser, more mature, more resilient person. And then you kind of face it again. So getting married, getting divorced, those are huge ways to kind of go through the journey, living at home with your parents, moving out, going to college, starting new jobs. Those can all be like hero journey aspects that are pretty transformational.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think we have hero's journeys within a hero's journey and possibly within another hero's journey, like little Russian dolls. So divorce is a hero's journey, right? Getting a new job, like you said, is a hero's journey. Migrating to a new country is heroic. All these life ventures that come to play essentially hold the theme rich within us and dear within us of the hero's journey, whether we're conscious of it or not. And that's why I really relate to seeing that hero's journey as some kind of a map overlay, because when you have an understanding of these phases, you can somehow be accepting or more at peace with the disorientation, because the unknown is scary. And ultimately what the hero's journey entails is a walk in the unknown. And we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's out there. We're blind, not only blind visually or sensorially, but experientially. We haven't had that exposure before. And that's what is frightening, And that what can feel so perilous for people when they engage in something that's so new, that is so outside their comfort zone or so beyond their familiar identity or day-to-day lives, that it provokes in them this sense of disorientation and decentering and deintegration. So in other words, instead of being put together, we get shattered into pieces when we are drawn into this journey. And we're drawn to make these changes and these moves for ourselves for various reasons. We're called perhaps to be an immigrant in this life, or to change a job, or we're called somehow to make these big decisions of divorce or family separation. We're somehow called to take this path, and we understand deep within us that it's going to be treacherous. And the hero's journey provides us with that insight that, okay, you have to trust the process. And a lot of the times in my own personal journey, I can actually relate with a particular stage in the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, because I think in the 1940s, there was the writer Maureen Murdoch, who then sort of evolved Joseph Campbell's original work or idea of the hero's journey into a more arguably a feminist approach. But the heroine's journey, I see that more as an internal journey. I think Campbell's does focus more externally, and the heroine's journey focuses more on reconciliation with the masculine, healing the mother-daughter split, and separating from toxic femininity. So it very much focuses more on the part of the journey that I connect most with, which is what's happening internally rather than what's happening externally.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good distinction to make. Said a journey within a journey. That just triggered something to me, because I didn't really know that the distinction, right, between the two, and didn't even think about it. But absolutely, because the external, some people pay attention to the external so much they forget to look at internal, and some people focus on internal too much that they forget to focus on the external. So it's like this, it's like the yin yang, right? It's like us trying to find the balance between the both, right? And what that looks like. I am all about practical. Like, what is the practical use of this outline, right? If we looked at it and we said, okay, it's a map, it's something we can look to. Okay, so then what? How do we use it in our own personal lives? How do we apply it to our own personal life so we can have some movement in our life, right? And I think that that's a really good way to look at it, because if I'm going through something internally, and I know that there's a journey, I can actually look externally to see what characters are rising out of that, right? Because there are things that are going to show up. So yeah, you're right. There's going to be the teacher. There's going to be the nemesis. And then we can kind of say, okay, well, who's helping me on this journey? Who's supporting me? And they all are, all the characters are, but what am I learning, right? What are the lessons that I'm learning as these people show up? So, and then externally, for people who are very external, they can say, what is that teaching me about myself internally? Because there might be the reversal of an individual, someone who's very, very internal, doing this deep work, may not be aware of the actual stuff that they're manifesting externally. And
I think
versa. Go ahead.
On that note, I think that is the integration of the masculine and feminine, or the yin and the yang, like you were saying. And I think for people who, let's say, are more internally or inward focused, it's then their hero's journey to become externally balanced, because having one or the other is in a very lopsided fashion, in an unbalanced fashion, is also not in alignment either. We can't ignore the external and just pull our praises on the internal, or vice versa. We live in this world, this duality, where we need to be able to integrate both of these archetypal elements. So everyone's external or internal hero's journey is going to be very different.
Yep. I'm like, I know it all too well. I'm like, come back down to earth.
Yes, I get that too.
You live on the planet. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot.
I forgot I was living here. Yeah, I was totally out on an otherworldly state. And And that's something that's been a hard lesson that I've had to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so what I do, this is a practice I take for people who are maybe like us, and Pam, I don't know if you're the same way. You definitely share. But
Mm.
I have my guides. I know who to go to when I'm too up in the clouds. And those people help reground me. They're like, yeah, okay, you've got to come back down. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I take myself way too serious, like I've got to fix this big problem. There's nothing to fix. It's just be with it, enjoy it. So and that just happened to me quite recently, actually, with the big energy. And I kind of also, there was another distinction that it kind of made, is that maybe one is the transpersonal experience, is the ego experience, maybe we can make that distinction, but that might be far-fetched and a little bit out there, which is what I do. But I'm starting to think like, well, maybe the internal, intuition, the connecting to the cosmic, like me connecting to the cosmic mother, being very, big archetypal energy, being transpersonal journey, where then we have the egoic journey, which might even be a whole other type of journey, right? So I don't know, that just like came to mind. I was like, whoa, I wonder if there's even a distinction there. You guys may or may not know that answer, or you may have read something about it, but it's just, that's what opened up for me at this point. What about you, Pam? What would you say? Are you like us? Are you in the clouds, or?
Oh God, yeah. I'm very internal. I like to isolate and just kind of go within, reflect. I was actually doing that this morning when I was journaling. I just let myself sit in stillness and get bored. And I'm kind of going through an integration process, like you were saying about the masculine and feminine. Like that's been part of my twin flame journey. And so I've been triggered in the past week and dealing with karma of old narratives that need to go, that no longer serve this lifetime, this current journey, this purpose. And so I'm bringing in new narratives. And I was sitting there and just like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, what do I want to do? Like, what do I know what I can do. I know what I should do, but I don't want to do chores. Like, how do I want to connect with spirit. And, and so I'm like, I'm going to journal. And then through that process, like, I realize that's when I have my ego who wants to write about, oh, I went for a walk with my child last night and I did this, and wants to like, document that. But then soul kind of comes through and wants to write about all these transpersonal experiences. And then I have this researcher in me that is watching it all play out and is taking notes on which personality and which energy is coming through so that I can write it, in research psychology books. And so it is like a balance, because we're human, but we're a soul. And so like when I walk, I tend to go within and then make an appearance to like look at the trees, watch how things are moving from the wind, take in the smells and use my senses to ground. And then I'll find myself back in my head and back into my heart and that energy. And so like that kind of going in and out on a nature walk will bring things into balance for me, as a reminder.
I like that. So you're like talking about a practice. What about you? Did you have practices that bring you back down to earth?
Being immersed in earth, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So I think actually reconnecting with nature is a very powerful tool for me, especially the earth element, to be corny. So mountains and rocks, they make me feel more grounded than if I were near the ocean. That would tend to make me feel more expansive. That would tend to make me feel this infinite space. But being near earthy elements, stones, I think that helps me. Dreams do not. Dreams take me to another plane. They're otherworldly. But to actually reconnect with the fact that we are earthlings, that we're human, that we're in an embodied spirit, and what does that mean in this life? I think that's sometimes a bit of a wake-up call for me. I have to sort of shock myself and say, oh, okay, yes, I'm not there, I am here, and what does that mean?
We're sorry, people. If you're not in the clouds, I don't know how we're going to help you get there, but we need to come back to Earth. So
Yeah.
it's funny. And I have practices too. Earth is one, but it's kind of funny because I was, and I think I was telling Pam this the other day. I actually wash dishes, and something about the warm, I don't know why, and it's maybe the act of doing something so human, right? Something that we have to do is clean up our mess. That like the feeling the water, feeling the warmth of the water, it even helps me like overcome my anxiety, because there is this, I feel, and I don't know if you guys experience this vast anxiety when I'm connected to that bigger space and that bigger journey, and I don't know what to do with it. So to bring it back down, to touch the water, to be with the water, and then to be with people, because I think that, we are talking about the hero's journey, and on the journey, there are people. And I think me recognizing, really, really, really recognizing, and I did, there's the Christ Blueprint, 13 Keys to Christ Consciousness. I love that book. I've read it many, many times, but there is a practice that you can do in there. It's a mandala practice where you actually will close your eyes and see the people in front of you, behind you, and to the sides of you. And in that practice, you don't look at what they mean. And after you read what each, the person in front of you, what meaning, symbolic meaning does that have behind you? And you start to see the characters in your life that are showing up, and you're going, oh, wow. And I find that, and this is hard for me, and I don't know if it's hard for you guys, to be in communication with other human beings. So I isolate and separate myself. And I kind of feel like, the journey becomes more of an in my soul, up in this cosmos, where I'm like, okay, I've got to spend time with people. I've got to recognize who my allies are. I've got to recognize the individuals who are going to help me through this. I've got to recognize who I feel is the person that's threatening me at this point, right? Who might be the nemesis, and what am I supposed to learn here through that individual? And how do I start to heal those relationships with the people that I'm around, and then move forward? And one of the big things that happened with me, and you guys can share if this triggers anything for you, is I was an alcoholic at one time, and at one point in my life. And once I stopped drinking, everybody around me changed, right? Nobody wanted to be around me, I wasn't fun anymore. I wasn't this anymore, but I was closer to my truer self. And perhaps I was afraid that nobody would accept me for who I truly was. And maybe I was numbing myself out by drinking alcohol, right? And then eventually, like Pam said earlier, new characters arise, and they showed up, and people who wanted to help me along that journey, and so people constantly, coming up, and that was a hard time for me. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just never have friends again. That's kind of how I thought. How could I possibly have friends that don't drink or party, or, that just want to have these types of discussions, right? But now look, we're in the presence of each other, where we can support each other in that way. And it's taken a long time, right? It's taken some time to find those individuals, but recognizing like, oh yeah, even my mother, and I'll end here and let you guys share, but even like you said, separation of mother, Lucy, you said that earlier, right? That there's the mother separation is a hard one. And even me setting boundaries with my family is a big piece, because they're part of your journey more than anybody, right? They're the main programming, and to leave that, right? To really go off on your own, to your own journey, that is a frightening place to be, because then it means, who am I now if I'm not identified through my family? I don't really know what that means, and it's scary, and you almost feel like an infant all over again. At least I felt like an infant. I still feel like an infant every single time. I'm like, dang it, I'm starting all over again. I thought I got it, but it's the new journey. So yeah, go ahead, Lucy. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, that is the peril behind disidentification, because we realize at a certain point that that old self that we identified with no longer serves us, or we need to surrender and let it go. Yet we haven't really developed or created or built what that new self looks like. We don't know who she is. And that can be so derailing. It can be so frightening. And that's where these landmarks and these goalposts if you will, of the hero's journey or the heroine's journey really helps. So I recently made a short film, a short art film called Journey, and it was based on a personal account of my own heroine's journey. And so it's very introverted and more inwardly reflecting. And I think it shows the vulnerability aspect of embarking on this journey. This part of us that is courageous enough to want to let go an old self, yet we don't know who that new self is. We haven't discovered her. And in some ways, we're blind. We're just trekking and we don't know where this path is going to take us. Ultimately, that requires some kind of trust. So I think also you mentioned, Natalie, about being very introverted. And I think that's also one of the, if you will, pitfalls of going on an inward heroine's journey, is that we can be so immersed in this journey that we forget that we're not here to do it alone. And that we think, okay, I'm going to be so heroic and I'm going to do this by myself, or I can handle this. Or we just think that nobody can really identify or understand with what we're going through because it's so intense. The experience, the intensity of that experience can be so overwhelming, perhaps, that we just feel naturally that we just need to hide it in our shell and withdraw. And that can occur for several reasons. One of the reasons would be trauma that makes us withdraw and makes us want to protect ourselves from the world. And the other reason that that can occur is also an internal gatekeeping mechanism where we're actually too afraid to open up or release ourselves to the world, to new learning experiences or to new unknown experiences. So there could be a lot happening there, but I would actually say that the process of coming more inwardly motivated and being a little bit disillusioned perhaps by connecting with the external world, that sometimes does happen as a result of awakening to this spiritual emptiness. And we don't really know where to go from there. So my advice is for anyone who finds themselves in that place, that it's then the hero's journey to break out of that shell or to re-engage with humanity, because isolating ourselves from humanity is also not the answer. And I have been through that as well. And so I resonate, and it was a hero's journey for me to open up to the world again, to share my gifts and to express myself and to give myself a voice. That was the internal road.
Awesome. And you're definitely giving us voice today, and we appreciate it. We do. No, it's good. You get to share here your journey. Pam, you were saying yes. Tell me. Speak. I know
Oh gosh. No, I definitely resonate with both of what you guys are saying. And yeah, for me, I've definitely have isolated intentionally, or not intentionally sometimes. I live in the country really, and like this little corner of the country. So I feel like the universe kind of isolated me, you know. I stepped away to kind of have a family and to protect them from the world because I was such a child myself, and I was really afraid, you know, of big cities like that I grew up in. And so now it's like I've been stepping out for years and like traveling and exploring life that way and learning and transforming myself. But yeah, I mean, there are people when you get habits and, you know, coping mechanisms. And so you like are in one group, and then when that doesn't resonate with you anymore, you lose them. And I've gone through that. I've stepped away from, you know, people that I hung out with just because they were nearby and I was lonely and depressed, or, you know, it makes it easy, but that wasn't truly me. Like we had nothing in common, you know. It was just easy because they were neighbors and they were there. And so I think part of that hero's journey, like Lucy is saying too, is like we have to drop the mask that we wear in all of these roles that we play, and we have to really show our authenticity. We can't get caught up in the fears of like trying to be people pleasers or gain other people's approval, because then we're just doing a disservice to ourselves. We're hiding away anytime we feel in a little bit of rejection or our feelings get hurt, you know, then we're putting up those gates and those walls. And really, the more that we can let that down, it's healthy for our own energy field, because then our chakras are flowing in balance. But yeah, I think that's when we really start to shine on our own journey, because we're not afraid of who we are. We love ourselves. And we know, like, the people who truly matter the most, that have the, you know, the healthy relationships with us, they're not going to abandon us. There, you know, so I think that's really an important part of the journey, is discovering who you are and then letting the world see that and not hiding behind this facade. And we're so conditioned to just be successful and, you know, to hide our family secrets. And that's why it's so hard for people to be like, oh, I can relate to your story, because nobody wants to share their stories out of like shame and guilt and fear. And once we start opening up, it's like, oh, I'm not alone. I like, because to think we're alone going through the same things is ridiculous, really. And that's that ego mindset. So yeah, it's just fascinating. Like, when you drop that and you become this person, it is scary in that kind of chaos of it all, as it's falling away and new things are being born, and you're kind of like in that existential crisis or life crisis from that happening to you, especially when you don't understand what's going on. But the more you can at least say, okay, I'm in this period or this phase. And that's what I was kind of saying about the journaling aspect for me, because I am kind of in that phase. I'm rewriting my narrative. So I have to let go of pieces of me that are holding me back, while finding like potentials that are kind of scary to embrace. But I know that's my soul's passion and my purpose.
Yeah. You know, I like you said, that resonates with me, because is that, you know, we have those people that are going to be with us along the entire journey, and there are people that will stick with us. They grow, they evolve with us, they come. It's like, my friend used to always say, everybody needs a Sam, right? Because in Lord of the Rings, right, there's Sam. And so I think, and it's true, we all need a Sam, and I think we all have one, right? It's like identifying who those people are, you know, in the journey. Like, who are those people that are truly by me? Like, I have a really good friend of mine, and her and I are just, we support each other. We rise together. You know, it's like I'm her Sam and she's my Sam. It's like we have that role and we play it back and forth, and it's such a beautiful thing. But I know that she's going to be with me on my journey, and we support each other. We just get each other, right? And we have those friends in our life that do show up. And I think sometimes people tend to focus on the villains, right? Their nemesis, you know, and they let that get away with them, rather than focusing on the ones that are helping them along the journey. Like, they forget that these people are really there to support them along and to help them along. And guides do show up. I mean, it's amazing for me how I've built this network of individuals who I trust and go to. They're like I used to call them my council, right? The council of these people who, you know, I know that if Natalie's going off into the ether, I call Raven, right? Which is a very dear friend of mine. And I'm like, okay, Raven, first of all, she's a tarot reader. So I'm like, I need my cards read. Okay. And everything she tells me, she's older, right? So she's an older, and she's a guide, and she's taught me a lot. But what I love about her, she's practical, and she's here. And she tells me, like, we're here. And I'm like, oh yeah. So she's the one who kind of like makes me remember, like, okay, you're just taking yourself a little too serious, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I think I am. Okay, cool. So she like wakes me up and reminds me, you know. And then I have my sister, which I'm very grateful for. I'm grateful that I have a sister that some people and their siblings don't get along, but my sister and I have a really powerful relationship, and we get each other. We can talk about these things together. So I always feel like I have her, and she's like a guide for me too, you know. And even though my mom and I love my mother, but she even reminds me, Natalie, you can't save the world, right? You're not here to save the world. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm not, you know, like, stop taking myself so seriously. But it is, the universe will send you these people, and you know, I think that's my message for any individual who's on this journey that may even be doing, like Lucy said, that introverted or the transpersonal journey or soul journey, or however you want to describe it, where you're up in the ether. It's like, just sit back and remember that there are people here that are actually your allies, the people that are here to help you through that, and that you're not alone on the journey, and that the universe will, if you call to it, if you say, please send me somebody who can guide me. Now, here's the deal. I just want to say this before you guys chime in. Don't get upset by who shows up. You don't get to choose who shows up to help you.
Be more specific.
I know. Or, you know, it's like, well, I didn't want that person to show up. Or you're like, I wish somebody would call me right now. And it's like, no, not that person. But that's exactly.
Well, I actually think who's showing up into your life is a great reflection of who you are at that time. Because we attract ourselves. You attract you. I wrote a post about this, and we see attributes in other people that we like or dislike, but think about all the people that you've attracted in your life at a certain period of time, and why you attracted them at that time, because you were that person. That was the vibration you were emanating, and we're all vibratory creatures. So we attract people on that same resonance. And I think it's important also to see that we meet people for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So whoever you're meeting, you know, often it may not be clear the reason behind why you're meeting that person. In hindsight, it may be, or you may re-embark on a new relationship with that person later on in life. But we have to also be open-minded as to what kind of role that person is playing, yet not be over-idealistic. So it's important to accept the people, but also see it with the lens of the witness state. And I think that just also reminds me, when you were talking, Natalie, about, I'm not sure if you guys have seen that film Castaway, but with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
And it's one of those Lost on a Desert Island films. But I think that is another example of a hero's journey alone, in isolation, trying to survive. Really, that's his goal, his mission for that journey. But on the topic of meeting allies or enemies or friends, the character in Castaway meets a basketball, Wilson, after he opens it up from some kind of FedEx package that was floating across shore. And so this inanimate object, Wilson, which he somehow, he draws like a little smiley face on it, and he really identifies with it, so much so that the audience, when you're viewing this film, you actually feel for Wilson when he loses Wilson. And there's that famous scene, and he shouts, "Wilson!" He lost the basketball. Wilson! And I think I even cried when I saw that, because we become so attached to Wilson. And I think Wilson in that film plays such an imperative role of what I would call in imaginal psychology, the friend. And that's actually part of Rumi's work, but there is a friend voice, friend with a capital F, is that voice that is going to guide us and be the best sibling or the best mother or the best aunt that you've ever had. So even though we should be acknowledging and being receptive to the voices external, I think we also again need to balance it with that internal friend voice as well.
Absolutely. Internal, external. So we have about 2 minutes left. Pam, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
And well, I was just thinking when Lucy was talking about how really, like, again, with the structure of consciousness, like, we mirror ourselves. And so, yeah, I think it's extremely important to remember that, like, we project and we mirror. And so that can really tell you where you're at and why you've aligned with these people. I have absolutely use that to understand, oh, this is a soulmate relationship for shadow work, because like it's about abandonment issues. And then other times it's like, this is a karmic relationship because I've learned this lesson and I don't need to learn it again, so I can say goodbye to you immediately and not keep you in my life for months and months. And so, yeah, when you step into that understanding and you take that perspective, it can be life-changing as well on the journey. But yeah, no, I'm just so grateful to be here and have this amazing conversation with you guys, you ladies.
Me as well. And what a great way to end it as well. So I am super grateful. I know that we will be doing, Pam and I are working on a workshop right now on the hero's journey, and also pairing it with the stages of development in clinical psychology, and how the two can kind of, we can see side by side, how does that relate to what we see in psychology? What terminology are we using that's similar to help us move through or navigate through our journey in life, and to develop, right, and to grow as human beings, as beautiful conscious beings, and expand our consciousness so that we can, reimagine a world, is what I'll say. We need to reimagine a new world, right? What that might look like. And so how do we move through these harder parts so that we can do that, right? Reimagine.
Right.
And so you can find us on Instagram, Women of Consciousness. We will be uploading these on YouTube and various other platforms. You can also follow me at Spirit and Coffee on Instagram. Pam, would you like to tell people how they can get a hold of you if they'd like to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have my business, Glinda's School of Alchemy. I have a Facebook page and Instagram under Glinda's Alchemy 101. A YouTube page. I got to add, I started building the foundation and then have split off. But yeah, because I'm taking life coaching clients and I do Oracle and Tarot readings. So a bunch of different projects for me.
Perfect. Thank you. Lucy?
Yeah, you can reach me at soulpreneur.love on Instagram.
Awesome. And also you can follow me at spiritandcoffee.com. I do have a podcast that I've done for quite some time. And then this talk show is going to have its own platform. So please follow us. And we have a beautiful lineup coming for you guys. And we will have people come on here as well. So it's been such a pleasure to be in the presence of you beautiful heroines. I'm excited to see how your journey unfolds and know that I can be an ally. I hope I'm not a nemesis, but if I am, it's only because you need it. I'm just kidding.
Love that. Yeah.
So there you have it. You guys have a fantastic evening, and we will be seeing you soon.
Bye.